I think it's really important to always go back to thinking about how you got started in these affiliates, because sometimes we, when we're working to really get this feeling of being part of our local, TESOL groups, we sometimes struggle, to get more people involved, to get fresh faces, to have people continue to join. And I think remembering it's those individual relationships, it's someone reaching out to you, maybe it was a professor, maybe it was a colleague, but you probably went to a conference and you just realized you are not alone, you're part of this bigger network, and it's so uplifting. So I think that really what happened in our COVID story that I'm going to share is really just about how we can elevate teachers through our affiliate work and through these really challenging moments as we've experienced. So just talk quickly about teacher leadership, what the online presence has meant to us, how we've worked to build our organization through this time, and any thoughts that we want to share. So of course, the idea of teacher leadership has been around for quite a while. It's not talked about as much in TESOL as it is in just the general kind of elementary and secondary or K-12 worlds. Especially, I think there's a gap when you look at the teaching of adults or the teaching of ESL in higher education. And of course, we span those spaces and we talk about advocacy, but we don't always talk about it as leadership. So I think thinking about how we take those wonderful educators we know from the classroom, helping them see that they can serve as models or coaches for others, how they can be how they can be supported to take their knowledge of classroom practice and bring that to others, how they can design professional development, and then of course how they can connect outside of their individual institutions to the wider communities, and also just to be part of this idea of a professional organization. And yes, we all come from kind of different places in the work, but I think positioning volunteerism more as leadership is it's just a choice of words, but I think words are very powerful. So when we say, oh, he's just a teacher or just a volunteer, I think it diminishes the work. So really recognizing all that we do, as leadership, I think is important. So in terms of fostering teacher leadership within the affiliates, thinking about each of us in a continuum of past, present, and future. So who are all the TESOL people who you've known in past places and settings in work? Who's with you now? Who are the kind of people you want to work with more? And expanding ourselves as individuals. Noticing social media. So if it's Facebook or Instagram or Twitter, or whatever it is that maybe you follow, notice who's very active. So if I see someone really active in a New York ESL group, I reach out to them and say, you are a member, right, of New York TESOL? Most of the times they're not. And I just give a free membership, because it's an investment in the organization. Don't tell everybody, the business manager, I do that. But, if you see someone's already being a leader and they're not a member of the affiliate, that's kind of a way to draw them in. People who attend the webinars, you could say, oh, here's Karen, she's been attending webinars. She's already a person who could be brought up. I think sometimes we're cliquish, or we tend to just go to the same people. So how can we expand and bring in new people? I'm really into titles. So any single thing that someone does gets a title of some kind, because we all need stuff for our CV or our resume. So if someone is going to help, basically, like maybe it was Cindy who wrote to me and said, hey, we're going to record this, but I don't know where I'm going to put it later. So you get someone to basically take it, put it on a YouTube channel, the BC TEAL YouTube channel, and now it has a link and it's up there. I call that person, a media manager. It's just basically taking webinars and sticking them on YouTube, but it is important, I think, for people to be recognized for this kind of work. Obviously, the universities and the teacher education programs, if we don't have them as a pipeline pushing into being part of the affiliate as being a professional, we're going to die. We need we need the pre-service teachers. I think we forget that that's a really good place to draw in. The other affiliate leaders. So here we are talking to each other. We have this sister affiliate, and as we were talking about before you all came on, it's sort of like in name only. And why does that have to be? Why can't we actually really share ideas? So when I was going through trying to plan this virtual conference that's coming up for New York TESOL, Georgia TESOL had just done one, and I just reached out to them, thinking about how we can strengthen those connections, because yes, we're part of Big TESOL and we care about Big TESOL, but the truth is most people are not going to be members of Big TESOL. They're members of the local, and it's a different kind of association and different kinds of involvement. Another thing for me was to create teams. So any area of the organization, I stuffed with additional people. So I felt that was important. Online presence was another piece that I think we weren't doing really well. That obviously with the stay at home and moving to COVID, we really had to. We had no more person-based events, site-based events. Everything went to webinar-based. And I think that it's hard to manage a lot of sites. So we have someone that volunteers to help with the website, someone who helps with the YouTube, as I mentioned, someone who does Facebook, who can then post it immediately to Instagram and Twitter. And we try to always connect back to our website, so it brings people back to the site and maybe they'll start to explore a little more. I think keeping your page very current is incredibly important. If every time I go to New York TESOL, it's the same pictures scrolling, it starts to feel very stale. So I think even small things like that that say, wow, it's alive. Someone's back there updating things. If you had an event that's long past, take it down, because it just looks like no one's home anymore. So we moved to a Facebook page so people can post, hello, kitty. So we have the page, we have the YouTube channel, and I'll just show you what we've done with the website. We have tried to, keep some things up to date. So let me just show you, for example, our SIGs and regions. It took a while to get these people's pictures. So remember I said there were 160 people who said they would do stuff. Well, get their pictures up here, because I think that's really important for people to look and see, maybe they're going to know somebody, or maybe they just can see themselves, reflected. So the diversity of New York has to be reflected in leaders. And it takes a while to change over like an all-white women leadership team. So we need people who are at different levels of leadership placed prominently, and then they can start to move up. A lot of these people who came in as but on the region or SIG level, some of them are now voted in onto the executive board. So now we only have a couple of white people left on our new board. So I'm very excited about that. So nothing against white people, but you know what I mean. Okay, so we ran 150 webinars since March. And how did I do it? Because I'm going to say I for this, because I said, you know what, our teachers are struggling. They need something. They need support. And if we wait around for school districts or anybody to come along and like provide professional development for English language specialists, you could be waiting and waiting and waiting. So we just started, and we were all teacher to teacher, professors, educators. Of course, everyone volunteered their time. All you need is Zoom. You just need to set it up, of course. And we ran everything from, based like how do you use Pear Deck? How do you make a Google form into a language assessment? How do you do this? How do you do that? A lot of tool-based things. then also skills-based conversations. What are you doing for your international students? What are you doing for this? What are you doing for that? So it didn't have to be a massive lift for people to prepare a webinar. I think it really brought people together to have a chance to talk about a lot of the concerns we were facing. I think it actually drove engagement, the COVID, because people really needed something and we were there providing it months before the schools did. And at the end of every webinar, people would post, what else do you need? What are you looking for? So for example, someone might post, someone posted, I need directions for families on how to use Google Classroom. And I need it in, you know, Bengali, Ukrainian, Spanish, Urdu, and everything else. And you know how it is. We're all, I'm sure it's the same, you know, in British Columbia as it is here. It's very diverse. So you can find people who know all those languages. So you just put the call, can anybody do it in Urdu? Can anybody do this? And we got them all translated. So we have about 15 languages on how to use Google for home, way before the schools could do it. So those were things that were just, we were able to be very responsive because it's just us, it's just people. There's no bureaucracy, you know, there's no big school district to get an approval or something on it. And we're constantly trying to think about the educators of adult and higher ed and our educators of K-12, because obviously we need both in the organization. And either one can become immediately disenchanted with the group if they feel something is dominating on one side or the other. So we're constantly trying to balance that. Every webinar was recorded. So we placed those webinars onto our YouTube channel, and we created a Padlet with an array of all of those. I can show you that too if you want to see that. We also, in our context, K-12 teachers need professional development hours, continuing learning hours, and our webinars, either live or recorded, can provide those. So that was also kind of helpful for those people who needed it. So again, we try to be very nimble and responsive to what teachers were saying they needed. I learned tons of tools watching webinars from people where I didn't know about certain apps. So for example, you might be on a session where there was a discussion about translation. You know, what do you use for a translation tool? And a teacher talked about an app called Talking Points that basically parents sign up for. It uses their cell phone. You type in English, they can receive it and read it in like up to 200 different languages. They write back to you and you read it in English. So it's a great app. And she was sharing it just in the discussion part. And so I asked her in the chat, oh my gosh, would you mind telling us about, oh, I'm just a teacher. I can't do a webinar. It's like, no. If you're a teacher, you can do anything. And you know Talking Points, you use it. So she said, I don't know if I can do it. I said, I'll host the Zoom. Don't worry about the Zoom. Just share about Talking Points. And it was her first time ever presenting. She was a kindergarten teacher. She was very nervous. And all she did was share about Talking Points. And she wrote such a beautiful letter to me afterwards about what that meant for her. You know, so giving that voice, it's much easier to do, I think, now, because you just ask someone to turn on their camera and share something. They don't have to go to a conference center or a hotel or have any costs or whatever. We also found that some of the presenters enjoyed it. They realized like, this is a really nice outlet for me. So we have several who offered like 4 or 5 in a row, like a series of workshops. We also looked at kind of building on other organizations. So we have a lot of universities, of course, in the state, but I'm in New York City. So, you know, you have the New School and Teachers College and NYU, and there, you know, there's a lot of activities already going on, webinars and that sort of thing. So it's like, can we co-sponsor? Just stick our logo on there and it's done. You know, we can get more attention. They can have some of our people. So looking for those opportunities, making it really easy to present. So, you know, if Karen, you know, is nervous, listen, Karen, I'll set the whole thing up. I'll do the Zoom. You don't have to register people. You don't have to worry about anything. You just show up, make it really easy for them. and then actively pursue people. So I mentioned about that first timer, the kindergarten teacher, but it's like, hey, Karen Godwin, you are so good at X. And I will like ask people right here in public. It's like, Karen, do you think you have any time to do like 30 minutes? You know, and then you pressure them into it in front of everybody. And then they say yes. So guilt and shame, I highly recommend as tools, because now they kind of have to, you know, do it. Because when you, like, if later I'm like emailing Karen, she's like, I don't really have time. I'm trying to say no. I'm trying to set limits, boundaries. It's like, no boundaries. No, you have to do this because you said it in front of everybody. But I think, you know, that's what helps with having a lot of different people. So I'm not asking Karen every single week to do it. It's like, all right, I can do this thing one time. The attendance. So how do you drive people to come to the webinars? This is another, so I talk about guilt, shame, and nagging. These are very underrated. You must nag people. You must remind them over and over. A lot of people tell me, no one wants to get too many emails from NYS TESOL. You don't want to bombard them. It's like, okay, well, they'll just ignore it then. But I find, you know, there's so much that just goes past people, but on that particular day, they're like, oh, I'm gonna like look at what's happening with BC-TEAL today, and they actually open it. So you just never know. So what I've done is I do a Monday memo. So every Monday morning, I send out a memo to all the members. So I've kind of restricted it as email to just Mondays. I try to put in all the things that are going on Mondays. But then social media is a place you can kind of post all the time, because as you know, if you're using it, it's scrolled past you by the time you just might have missed it. So it's good to put it on frequently. Understanding that every interaction is a chance to promote membership. So it's not enough to just say, hey, we're having this webinar, it's a great topic, and be done with it. It has to be about why we love being part of, you know, BC-TEAL, why we love New York TESOL. Why aren't you part of it? I hope all of you are members, you know, really messaging that every time, and being a pushy New Yorker, not a polite Canadian. This is also a good thing. We have those SIGs and regions. In our case, I'm sure you have also different ways that you divide up your subgroups or your areas. I basically, again, told them you have to host an open hour. So you're in X region, you host 2 a year, 1 in the fall, 1 in the spring, and you don't have to prepare a thing. You just open it up and say, let's talk about what's going on. A lot of people come because they just want to, like, now we're all trapped in our home and we want to connect. So it's a good chance for people to connect. Okay. So what happened, we had a huge growth in membership. So I don't know your membership numbers. I mean, ours are still, I think, low, very low, considering how many ESL professionals we have. But in January, we had about 1,100 members, and we have about 2,300 members now. So we had a big increase in this time period, really because of the webinars. Because all of a sudden we had presence. We were there every week with things to offer you as a member. The webinars were always free, open to everyone, not restricted to members, but we only gave continuing learning units or certificates to members for participation. So a lot of people said, well, I'm attending a couple of these, I might as well become a member. We brought the membership rate down to $20.20 for 2020. And again, people were saying, oh, is that good to bring it? It's like, yes, because $20 doesn't seem like a lot to people, whereas 30 can seem like a lot. So it's just a kind of a mental thing, I think, and more people were apt to kind of go ahead and join. In terms of leadership development, every presenter gets a letter, you know, a thank you letter from me. Really celebrating what they're doing. As soon as someone's presenting, they're someone you could ask to be involved in the conference or involved in another level. And again, I don't use the word volunteer, I just use the word leadership. And I think that helps people feel better about it. And it's almost like a framing, instead of framing it as like some kind of sacrifice and abuse of their time, which is how volunteers feel, sort of martyred. Then you kind of turn it into something more proactive, more energized. So we have a big conference coming up. I hope that some of you can come. I know a couple of you will come. And let me just show you a little on our website about the conference. We have a kind of a schedule at a glance. So we're excited about, you know, what we're kind of going to try to pull together. Hopefully it's going to work. We have concurrent sessions and also obviously workshops, keynotes. We have over 100 sessions in 2 days, just November 13th and 14th. So we're very excited about that. Hopefully that will work out. Zoom won't fail those 2 days on us, but I think we're able to do it because we've had a lot of activity all year. So we couldn't just do like, oh, here's one speaker for our we needed to bring it up for, it's, as Karen said, it's our 50th. I thought I would get a nice like blue and gold ball gala event, but of course, no. I'm going to be at home sweating it out for Zoom for 2 days. But those were some of the thoughts I had. I wanted to just open it up, and you know, anything that you want to ask about or share ideas in terms of kind of inspiring. You know, it's a great series. I love your title. Your next speakers sound amazing. So this is really kind of like a background type of affiliate info type session, but I'm curious about anything you want to comment on or ask or anything like that. Well, obviously we had a very dramatic wave here, as you probably know from the news. And it was a very frightening time. And now, you know, our schools start back here in New York generally after Labor Day, our Labor Day, which is, you know, the beginning of September. So we're only in maybe the 3rd week of school here. And it's been, it varies quite a bit. So obviously in New York City, they have not still been able to really bring kids back to school. In the suburbs, it's kind of hybrid. In some parts of the state that are rural, kids are going back 5 days. But as you know, educators are very, they're like the grand science experiment in this whole thing. So there are educators who are not able to come in, you know, because of their own health concerns. The services for English learners is incredibly, a really difficult time because we have the situation of, on the learner's side, some of those learners are going to stay home. The learners don't have access to the devices. They don't have the bandwidth. They don't necessarily have the computer literacy or the English literacy to really function well in remote teaching. And then you have a lot of teachers who, you know, are not able to come into the building. Classrooms are limited in terms of how many people you can put in them. So even when a teacher would normally go into a classroom, let's say an elementary classroom, to support English learners in the room, they're not allowing any extra adults in the room. So the ESL teacher can't come in the room, or the ESL teacher is teaching remotely. How are they going to work with kids who are coming in the building? You know, adult ESL, very challenging. I'm sure the same for you, because the literacy level, it's very difficult to keep attendance high anyway. And now you have these barriers. I basically see it as English learners have lost 6 months from March to now. It's essentially little to no instruction in English. So it's extremely difficult. And the teachers have moved beyond the tools phase for sure. They've figured out Pear Deck, Nearpod, Zoom, and everything else. But implementation, everything that happened pre-pandemic is just intensified. You know, the difficulties in co-planning, the time, the status of the ESL teacher, you know, all of those things that had us marginalized before, you know, continue now, even more so, because they're just trying to open the building, you know, to have the regular math and English classes going. So ESL kids are still kind of an afterthought. And there is, you know, tremendous budget cuts coming. We have decrepit buildings and, you know, really underfunded public schools. So they can't open because they don't have ventilation. So, you know, we're really, really in a moment still. I would consider it still, you know, an emergency remote teaching continuation from the spring. As I was asking about these, the amount of time, you know, and I think it's true that from K-12 or in higher ed, there's been so much more time that teachers have had to put into figuring out how to deliver the instruction that they would have given and bring it online. And I think that's true probably everywhere. We're really also had no summer break because we were all stressing about this for now quite a while. So there's a lot of fatigue. And I think that's why the turning to each other, the community is so important, because teachers who care, those are the ones that are working so many in such difficult situations, trying to continue to do what they do for English learners. So I think being there, just saying, I know we're struggling. I know that, you know, this is incredibly hard, but think about the learners. Keep thinking about them, because that's really our only source of energy, is to drive us, you know, continually forward. And that's where I think, you know, giving ourselves times to step away from the work, and it could just be like here you are on an evening, just reconnecting, re-energizing, you know, so that you can kind of return back to what you're doing. That's, I think, an important part of what affiliates can do. You know, in an insane state education department, and all these new policies that affect English learners. So how now do you do placement and testing when it's all remote and the student is a newcomer, has no computer? I mean, this is just like help. So what I did was I would try to partner. So we have strong teacher unions, you know, and I took the people who are head of the unions that work specifically with English learner issues to be our guests. So that is like the draw, I think. So you're bringing in that person who can really answer like everyone's concerns, everyone's complaints, everyone's, like you said, anxieties, and it diverts it a bit from, it's not that New York TESOL can answer all those, but we can bring somebody in from the state, some district official who can speak to you about it. We can facilitate it. And that, I think, takes the heat off of us a bit. And it's, again, we're just really serving as a place to create a forum. There's many of us people who are yoga instructors or meditation instructors, you know, so we had a couple people who do meditation or do yoga in other parts of their lives. And we did just like a relaxation one. It was like 30 minutes. And you just want to cry in those times, because like these people, I don't know you, you know, and you're from like British Columbia, but we're all here together, like, you know, and just having a holding space or a moment of silence together. We had someone do just a basic drawing activity, like just all we needed was like paper, some markers, and she did one of those like picture book activities that you can do with students, but we just found it, so she put on music, we did that, people loved that as well. So I think being kind of really really in tune, you know, but I think as much as possible, always allowing, really using that chat, really having some kind of icebreaker. It doesn't have to be a silly one, it could be a more serious one, but people are there because they actually really want to make friendships, they want to make connections. And yes, sometimes we do just want information, but in general, we can just go to YouTube and watch a video on a lot of these things. We want to hear an ESL person talking about doing it. Like, what did you really do? How did you really set up that activity? You know, how are you really handling your newcomers? So it's the interaction. So creating the space for that throughout the webinar is very important. So it's not like a monologic, just like I'm presenting and I'm done kind of a feeling, I think is important. Yeah, this is a rapid changing environment. So I think the affiliates, as it sounds like you are, we're just trying to keep a pace, keep our pulse on what people do need, so that we can stay relevant to them, and to each other. Well, we will continue to be sisters across the miles to see what else we can do for with each other in the year to come.